Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. So, if you've been immersing yourself in Japanese, working through Genki, you've probably hit lesson 3, right? The infamous lesson 3 wall.
Yeah, that's what everyone calls it. The steep curve.
Exactly. People say it's like a steep curve or, sometimes even dropping you off a cliff with no safety measures.
It definitely feels that way for a lot of learners, and it's fascinating how universal that feeling is.
Because it just throws so many fundamental things at you all at once. It can feel, well, pretty overwhelming.
It really can. It's where you hit verbs in a big way, particles, time references, all core building blocks.
Right.
But, the flip side is mastering these now, getting your head around them in lesson 3, it sets you up for basically everything that comes after.
It's like a necessary hurdle.
A critical junction, really. It's a power-up if you nail it.
Okay, so that's our mission today. We're doing a full deep dive. We're going to cut through that complexity of Genki Lesson 3. We'll focus on the essential grammar, give you clear, actionable examples, so you can move forward feeling confident, like you actually understand it, not just memorizing rules.
Exactly. It's about genuine insight. Demystifying verbs, particles, tense.
All right, let's unpack this. Okay, so the minute you crack open Genki Lesson 3, the big thing staring you in the face is verb conjugation. And the textbook starts with this ru verb and u verb classification, which, is where a lot of people start to feel a bit shaky.
Yeah, that's the traditional starting point, but it can get confusing fast.
How so? What's the main issue there?
Well, it's mainly the exceptions. You learn a rule based on the ending, like if it ends in ru, but then you immediately hit verbs that end in ru but don't follow that rule.
Right, so it feels like you're just memorizing exceptions rather than learning a system.
Precisely. And that's when it starts feeling like that cliff you mentioned. You lose the pattern.
So is there a better way, a different framework?
There absolutely is. And it's actually simpler and more reliable in the long run. It's using the Ichidan and Godan classification.
Ichidan and Godan.
Okay, this framework has far fewer exceptions because it's based more on how the verb actually conjugates, its internal structure, not just the superficial dictionary ending. It's often how it's taught to native Japanese speakers, too.
That sounds promising. Less guesswork involved.
Much less. Once you get the core rule for each type, it becomes way more intuitive.
All right, let's break these down then. Where should we start? Ichidan.
Let's do it. Ichidan verbs. These roughly correspond to Genki's ru verbs. The name Ichidan itself is helpful. It means one grade or one stage.
One stage, implying simple conjugation.
Exactly. Think of it as a single straightforward step to conjugate them. No complex changes needed within the verb stem itself.
Okay, so what is that one simple step? How do we actually conjugate them?
The core rule is super clean. You just drop the final ru from the dictionary form.
Just lop it off.
Yep. And then you stick the ending you need directly onto what's left, like masu for the polite present.
No sound changes or anything tricky?
Nope. It's a clean swap, like changing a Lego brick.
Okay, let's see some examples. Using that polite present affirmative, the masu form from lesson 3.
Sure. Take tabaru, to eat.
Yeah.
Drop the ru, you're left with kabe. Add masu.
Tabemasu.
Simple as that. Or miru, to look, watch. Drop ru, get mi, add masu.
Mimasu.
Right. One more. Neru, to sleep. Drop ru, leaves near, add masu.
Namasu. Got it. It's very consistent.
It really is. That's the beauty of Ichidan verbs.
And does the same logic apply for the negative? The polite present negative, mason.
Exactly the same logic. The rule holds. For miru, to look, drop the ru, add mason.
Yimasen.
Perfect. And for nearly, to sleep.
Drop ru, add mason. No masen, I don't sleep.
You got it. Once you identify a verb as Ichidan, the conjugation is smooth sailing. They're your easy wins.
That definitely makes Ichidan verbs feel a lot less intimidating. Okay, now for the other side of the coin, the Godan verbs.
All right, Godan U verbs. These are Genki's U verbs.
And Godan means?
5 ranks or 5 stages. And that name is a clue.
5 stages sounds more complicated than 1 stage.
It is a bit more involved than Ichidan, yeah. Unlike Ichidan verbs where you just drop the word ru, Godan verbs require a sound change in the verb's final syllable before you add the ending like masu.
A sound change within the verb itself.
Exactly. The stem itself transforms slightly. It shifts through one of those 5 stages, which correspond to the 5 Japanese vowel sounds A, I, U, E, O.
Okay, so the actual sound of that last syllable shifts. How does that work for the amasu form specifically? What's the pattern?
For the polite present affirmative, the masu form, the core rule is this. The final U sound of the verb's dictionary form ending changes to an I sound.
U becomes I.
U becomes I, or an equivalent sound in the Japanese system before you add a masu. Think of it as the I shift.
All right, this feels like the core of the complexity. Can you walk us through examples based on the different dictionary form endings? This seems crucial.
Absolutely. Let's break down the sound changes systematically. This is where recognizing the pattern helps a lot. Verbs ending in U, like KAU, to buy. The U sound changes to I, so KAU becomes
Rimasu.
perfect. Verbs ending in ku, like kiku, to listen here. The ku sound changes to ki, so kiku becomes
Kikimasu. The K stays, the vowel changes.
exactly. Verbs ending in su. Now, here's a slight twist, hanasu to speak. The su doesn't become si because si isn't really a standard sound. It becomes shi.
Ah, right. So hanasu becomes hanashimasu.
Good point. A key phonetic shift. Memorize that one. Verbs ending in tu. Similar thing. Matsu, to wait. Su doesn't become ti. It changes to chi.
Okay, so matsu, machimasu. Another specific shift.
You got it. Verbs ending in nu. These are rare. Shinu, to die, is the main one. Nu changes to ni. So shinu becomes
Shinamasu.
right. Only two modern verbs end in nu, really. Shinu and the old verb. Any verbs ending in mu.
Yeah.
Like no mo, to drink. Mu changes to me. Pretty straightforward.
Nomimasu.
Yep. Verbs ending in do. Like sogu, to hurry. Gu changes to gi.
Misogemasu.
Verbs ending in bu. Like asobu, to play. Bu changes to buy.
Asobimasu. Seems consistent now.
It follows the pattern. Now, the tricky one's visually. Verbs ending in ru, but are godan type. This is the trap. Some verbs end in ru, but conjugate like godan, not ichiden. Take noryu to get on ride. The ru sound changes to ri.
Ah, so it's not nomasu, it's norimasu. That's the key difference from taberu becoming tabimasu.
Exactly. Tabu drops the ru. Godan ru verbs change ru to ri before masu. Another example, wakaru, to understand, becomes wakarimasu.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of specific sound changes for Godan, even if they follow that I shift idea. Definitely more complex than Ichidan. What about the negative polite, the Mason form for these Godan verbs? Does it use the I shift too?
Good question. No, for the Mason form negative, the rule changes slightly. Instead of shifting the final U sound to I, you shift it to an A sound before adding the negative components.
U becomes A for the negative base.
Exactly. It's sometimes called the A stem conjugation. So for nomu, to drink, the base becomes noma. Then you form the negative polite.
Which ends up as nomimasen, right? Still has the polite Mason.
Right. The full form is nomimasen, but the underlying stem change is to A. Kiku, to hear, becomes kikabe, so
Kikimasen.
hanasu, to speak. Hanasa base, hanashimasen.
Dashi sound again?
Yep. Matsu, to wait. Mata base, machimasen.
And Iku, to go?
Iku, ika base, ikimasen. It follows the Godan pattern here, even though it's irregular in some other forms.
Okay, so this highlights the problem. If the standard Ryu classification is confusing, especially with those verbs ending in ru that could be either type, how do you reliably know if a verb is ichidan or godan from the start?
That is the crucial question. Because if you guess wrong, your conjugation will be wrong.
So what's the foolproof method?
It's the nai form method, your ultimate classifier.
The nai form, the casual negative.
Exactly. Forget trying to just rely on the dictionary ending, especially for ru verbs. Remember, kiru, to cut, versus kiru, to wear. Both end in ru. One's godan, one's ichidan. Looking only at ru doesn't help.
So how does learning the nai form solve this?
It's beautifully simple and robust. When you learn a new verb, learn its nai form at the same time. The sound right before the nai ending tells you everything. For godana, U verbs, if the nai form ends in an A sound before the nai, like nomu, nomanai, kiku, kikanai, yomu, yomanai, it's always godan. No exceptions, A sound godan.
Okay.
For ichidan ru verbs, if the nai form has an E or I sound before the nai, like tabaru, tabanai, miruminai, kiru, to wear, kinai, it's always ichidan. No exceptions, E or I sound, ichidan.
Wow. That seems incredibly clear-cut. So the advice is every single time you learn a new verb, dictionary form, and nai form together.
That's the single most practical piece of advice. Make it a habit. Dictionary form plus nai form. It instantly classifies the verb for you, reliably.
Let's use that kiru example again to really nail it down.
Perfect. Kiru, to cut. Its nai form is kiranai, that I sound tells you.
It's godan, so it conjugates to kiramasu.
Exactly. Kiru, to wear. Its nai form is kinai, that I sound tells you.
It's ichidan, so it conjugates to kimasu.
Bingo. See? The nai form removes all ambiguity. It's your classification superpower.
That feels like a huge weight lifted. So, okay, but what about those verbs that look like ichidan, ending in eru or iru, but are actually sneaky godan verbs, those so-called exceptions?
Ah, yes, the imposters. These are the ones that cause the most frustration because they break the simple visual pattern. They end in eru or iru, look ichidan, but conjugate, using the Godon sound shift rules.
The ones that trip everyone up.
Definitely. There are maybe a dozen or so common ones. If you just memorize that these specific verbs are Godon, despite their appearance, you'll avoid a lot of headaches. There are about 10 really common ones to know early on.
Okay, let's list them out. Maybe mentioning their nai form confirms their godon too.
Good idea. Knowing these 10 is critical. 1, heru, to enter. Looks ichidan, but nai is heranai, so it's Godon herimasu.
Not haimasu, got it.
2, hashiru, to run. Nai is hashiranai. Godon ashiramasu.
Not hashimasu.
3, iru, to need. This specific iru, nai is iranai, Godon irimasu. Careful. Iru meaning to exist, is ichidan inai imasu.
Ooh, that's a tricky homophone pair. Need, godon, exists ichidan.
Crucial distinction. 4, kairu, to go home return. Very common. Nai is karinai, Godon karimasu.
Definitely not kaimasu.
4, kaigiru, to limit. Nai is kajaranai, Godon kagirimasu. 6, kiru, to cut. We know this one. Nai is kiranai, Godon kirimasu.
Distinguishing it from kiru to wear, which is kinai is shichidan kimasu.
Exactly. 7, shaberu, to speak chatter. Ends in eru, but nai is shaberanai, Godon shaberimasu. 8, shiru to nose. Nai is shiranai, Godon shirimasu. 9, kiru to kick. Ends in eru, but nai is karanai, Godon karimasu. 10, subaru to slide. Nai is subaranai, Godon sabarimasu.
Okay, so that list of 10, they look ichidan, but the nai form confirms they follow the godon a sound pattern, so they conjugate like godon. Memorize these as godon.
Precisely. There are exceptions to the visual shortcut, but they still follow the godon conjugation rules once identified. The nai form is your identifier.
That clears up a massive potential confusion point. So we have ichidan, godon, identified by nai form, and these 10 common godon imposters. Are there any others we absolutely need to know for lesson 3?
Just the 2 true irregular verbs. For these, there are no patterns, no tricks. Pure memorization.
Which ones are they?
Thankfully, just 2 main ones at this stage. 1, suru, to do. Polite form is shimasu. Negative polite is shimasen.
Okay, shimasu, shimasen.
2, kuru, to come. Polite form is kimasu. Negative polite is kimasen.
Kimasu, kimasen. Got it. Just lock those away.
Yep. Non-negotiable. They appear everywhere.
So what does this all mean for your everyday Japanese? It really feels like getting these verb types and conjugations down, especially using that nai form classifier, is the absolute key. It's the engine allowing you to talk about actions.
It really is.
Now, how do these verbs interact with the rest of the sentence? Let's move on to those tiny but mighty words, particles.
Absolutely. If verbs are the engine, particles are the crucial connectors, the grammar glue. They might be small words, but they define the relationships between all the pieces in your sentence. They tell you who did what to what, where, when, how.
They assign the roles, basically.
Perfectly put. They assign grammatical roles. Lesson 3 introduces some heavy hitters, o, eshi, di, and ni, plus a little bit about e. Mastering these is vital for making sense.
Okay, let's start with O, the object marker. Seems simple, but that pronunciation is key, right? It's written wo, but said.
Always pronounced o, just like the vowel o, not whoa. Forget the W sound entirely in pronunciation.
Just O. And its function.
Its main job is to mark the direct object of the verb. It points to the noun that directly receives the action. The structure is generally noun plus verb.
Give us some examples showing that direct object relationship clearly.
Sure. Chu o nomimasu. I drink coffee. Coffee is the thing being drunk, marked by o.
Makes sense.
Terebi omimasu. I watch TV. TV is the thing being watched.
Straightforward.
On oyomimasu. I read a book. Book is the object being read. Tomodachi o machimasu. I wait for a friend. Friend is the object of the waiting action. It clarifies who is being waited for.
Okay, so O points to the thing directly affected by the verb's action. Easy enough. Next. De. The place of action marker.
Right. De. This one is important because it specifies where an action actively takes place. Think of it as marking the location of the activity.
As opposed to just existing somewhere.
Exactly. It emphasizes the action happening within that place. The structure is place noun plus verb.
Let's hear some examples that really show that action happening at the place idea.
Okay. Toshokan de ono yomimasu. I read a book at the library. The reading action happens in the library. The library is the venue.
Makes sense.
Kenji gohan o tabemasu. I eat lunch at the park. The park is where the eating occurs.
Okay.
How about this one from the sources? McDonald's no made a Mary-san o majimashita. I waited for Mary in front of McDonald's. The location in front of McDonald's is marked by dikamersha because that's where the waiting happened.
Clarifies the exact spot of the action.
Yep, or daparo de kaimono or shimasu.
I shop at the department store. shopping happens in the store. So day marks the stage for the action. You mentioned it has other uses, though.
It does, yeah. It can mark the memes, hashida tabemasu, eat with chopsticks, cause, material. But for lesson 3, the main focus is definitely location where an action takes place.
Got it. Location of activity. Now the big one, ni, often feels like the trickiest particle because it does so many things. What are the main jobs for lesson 3?
You're right, ni is super versatile. But lesson 3 zeroes in on 2 fundamental roles, goal of movement and specific time marker.
Okay, let's tackle goal of movement first.
When you use ni with movement verbs like iku to go, kuro to come, kairu to return, it marks the destination, the place you are moving towards and arriving at.
The end point.
Exactly. Structure. Destination noun plus movement verb. Gakchi ni ikimasu. I go to school. School is the destination. Kyusho ni ikimasu. I go to Kyoto. Kyoto is the arrival point. Uchi ni kaerimasu. I will return home. Home is the destination of returning.
So ni marks the to and go to, come to, return to.
Precisely. It can also mark the target of other actions, like tomodachi ni amasu. I meet a friend. The friend is the target or destination of the meeting.
Okay, that makes sense for movement destination. What's the other main function? Specific time.
Yes, time of action. Specific. Ni marks a precise point in time when an action happens. Think clock times, days of the week, specific dates, months.
Pinpointing the moment.
Exactly. Structure, time expression plus verb. Juji ni namasu. I go to bed at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is a specific time.
Okay.
Michibi ni Kyoto ni ikimasu. I go to Kyoto on Sunday. Here's that great example using ni twice. Once for the day, ichibi ni, and once for the destination, kyuchito ni.
Shows how versatile it is in one sentence.
Definitely. Or kuji ni shigoto o shimasu. I work at 9 o'clock. Specific time again.
What if the time isn't exact, like around 10 o'clock? Do we still use ni?
Good question. No. For approximate time, you use goro after the time expression. Juji goro namasu. I sleep around 10 o'clock. Goro handles the approximation.
Goro for around. Got it. Now, crucially, when do we not use par for time? This trips up English speakers all the time because we use prepositions like on or at much more.
This is super important. You do not use ni with time expressions that are relative or indicate frequency or are inherently non-specific points.
Such as?
Words like today, kich, tomorrow, ashita, yesterday, next week, raishu, every day, mainichi, every morning, mayasa, this year, last year. Also when asking when, hippu.
Why not?
Because these words are either specific enough already, like you just means today, or they define a duration or frequency. Mainichi means every day. So adding ni feels redundant or grammatically incorrect.
So, meinichi kuchi o nomimasu. I drink coffee every day.
No ni needed.
Exactly. No meinichi ni, just meinichi.
Ashita ga ni ikimasu. I will go to school tomorrow. No ni after ashita.
Correct.
Itsu ni ikimasu ka. When will you go to Japan? No ni after itsu.
Perfect. If the time word itself implies the frequency or relativity, leave ni out. Okay, that's a key rule. Finally, let's quickly touch on a, written he, pronounced e. How's it different from ni for movement?
Yes, e, direction marker, pronounced e. It's very similar to ni for marking a destination with movement verbs. The nuance is subtle. E puts slightly more emphasis on the direction or the path towards the destination.
So less about arrival and more about heading towards it.
Kinda, yeah. Think of it as towards or in the direction of. Neon e ikimasu, I go towards Japan, focuses on the vector of travel. America ikayamasu, I will go home towards America. Emphasizes direction.
Is it interchangeable with ni?
Often, yes. For movement verbs, you'll hear both. Ni is probably more common in everyday modern speech, just to state the destination plainly. E has a slightly more, maybe literary feel or emphasizes the journey. Some say younger speakers use ni more, older speakers might use e more.
So ni for destination is the safe default. E adds a nuance of directionality.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay, let's recap particles. O marks the direct object, what gets verbed. A marks the location of an active action. E marks the destination of movement, or R, a specific point in time. And A marks direction toward a place.
You've got it. Those little words pack a huge grammatical punch.
Absolutely. And understanding them unlocks so much. Here's where it gets really interesting. Putting it all together, verbs, particles to talk about your life, your habits, your plans, hashtag tag check 3, unpacking present tense and invitations.
Right. So we've got the verbs, we've got the particles connecting things. Now let's clarify how the Japanese present tense, that masu form, actually works. because it's not quite like the English present tense.
Yeah, you mentioned it doesn't necessarily mean right now.
Exactly. That's a key difference. In English, I eat usually means right now or habitually, but I am eating is specifically right now. Japanese masu doesn't usually mean right now in this instant.
So what does it mean?
It generally covers two main areas. Habitual action, something you do regularly, routinely, or is generally true.
Like, I drink coffee, meaning I'm a coffee drinker.
Precisely. Or it indicates a future action, something you plan or intend to do sooner or later.
Like, I will drink coffee.
Exactly. So the same asu form covers both habit and future intention.
How do you know which one is meant, then?
Context is king. Absolutely everything depends on the situation, the preceding conversation, or any time words used in the sentence.
Can you give an example of that ambiguity?
Sure. If I just say, shugu o namimasu, out of the blue,
Could mean.
could mean I drink coffee, habitually, maybe in response to, do you like coffee? Or it could mean I will drink coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe you just offered me some. The context tells you which.
That's really efficient, but also requires good listening skills.
It does. And it highlights another cool thing, sentence flexibility. Often, just the verb is enough if the context is clear.
Like, if someone offers food, you just say tabemasu.
Yep, tabimasu. I will eat, I eat. Perfectly fine, complete sentence in that context. No need for I or food.
Very different from English. Okay, so if we're talking about actions and intentions, a big part of that is inviting people. How do we do that politely in Japanese using what we learned in Lesson 3?
Lesson 3 introduces the standard polite invitation form, masenka.
Masenka. How does that translate?
Think, won't you, or shall we? It sounds negative in English, but it's not. It's a gentle, polite suggestion.
How do we form it?
You take the verb stem, the part before mathu, and add masenka.
Okay, examples. Maybe inviting someone for pizza.
Perfect. Yushuni pizza o tabemasenka. Would you eat pizza with me?
Tabi is the stem of tabemasu.
Or inviting someone to study.
Ashita ishoni benki shimasenka. Won't you study with me tomorrow?
And a polite reply.
A positive one could be, Ireso yo. Arigatou gozaimasu. Sure, that's good. Thank you very much.
And a polite decline.
Often indirect. Sumimasen ashita tato. Sorry, tomorrow's a little inconvenient busy. You trail off politely.
So masenka is the polite go-to. Are there other, maybe less formal ways to invite people? For friends. Yes, absolutely. Japanese has levels of politeness for invitations too. You could use isen, just dropping the final ka from masenka. It's still polite, but a bit friendlier, more casual.
Like, kuchin namimasen. Won't you drink coffee? Want some coffee?
Exactly. Good for colleagues or people you know reasonably well. Softens it slightly.
What about even more casual, like close friends?
Then you'd likely use the plain negative form, the nai form itself, often with a rising intonation like a question.
So, tapenai, want you eat? Wanna eat?
Yep. Or ikanai, want to go. Very direct, very informal. Strictly for close relationships.
Is that it, or are there others?
There's one more, naika. Using the casual negative nai form plus ka.
Ikanai ka. Want you go? Let's go.
Right, but be careful with this one. It can sound very strong, direct, maybe a bit forceful, and often quite masculine.
So, not one for beginners to throw around lightly.
Definitely advise caution. Stick with masenka or masen until you have a really good feel for social context and nuance. Naika can easily sound abrupt or demanding if used incorrectly.
This really raises an important question then. How do you know which invitation form to use?
It comes down entirely to context and relationship. Who are you talking to? How well do you know them? What's the situation? Choosing the right level of politeness is a huge part of speaking natural Japanese.
It's not just grammar, it's social awareness.
Absolutely. They're intertwined. #tag AVC, mastering frequency adverbs, and sentence flexibility.
Okay, so we can make statements and invitations. Let's add more detail. How often do we do these things? Let's talk about frequency adverbs.
Good idea. These add a lot of color to your descriptions of habits and routines.
Let's start with the positive frequency adverbs. Words that say something does happen, sometimes or often.
Right. Common ones are minichi, every day, taite usually, yoku, often much, tokidoki, sometimes.
And where do these go in a sentence? English is kind of picky about adverb placement sometimes.
Japanese is much more flexible, which is nice. Generally, they can go before the verb, or even earlier in the sentence, often before the object or other elements. They tend to precede the part of the sentence they most closely modify, but there's wiggle room.
Let's see some examples of that flexibility.
Okay. Watashi wa tokidoki cafe de kuchi o nomimasu. I sometimes drink coffee at a cafe. Here, Tokidoki comes right before the place, an object.
Makes sense.
Or, watashi wa minichi go waduchi shigoro nimasu. I sleep around 11 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
Manichi is right at the start, setting the frequency for the whole sentence.
Okay.
Watashi wa yokudobi ni uchi de terebi o mimasu. I often watch TV at home on Saturdays. Yoku comes before the time, place, object part.
Seems pretty straightforward. So position is flexible, generally before the verb phrase.
Largely, yes. Now, for the negative frequency adverbs, things get stricter.
Ah, okay. Which ones are these?
The main ones for now are amari, not much, not often, rarely, and zenzen, not at all, never.
And what's the strict rule here? This is a common mistake zone, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The rule is simple but non-negotiable. Amari and zenzen must be used with a negative verb form, like mosen or nai.
Cannot use them with a positive verb.
Absolutely not. It's grammatically incorrect. Think of them as a pair. Negative adverb plus negative verb.
Okay, examples, please.
Amari suki janai. I don't really like it very much. Janai is negative.
You can't say amari suki desu.
Never. Kuchi amari namimasen. I drink coffee too often. Ni namimasen, the negative form.
Right.
Zenzen tabemasen. I don't eat it at all. I absolutely won't eat it. Damasen is negative.
Total negation.
Yep. Watashi wa zenzen shigoto o shimasen. Don't work at all today. Negative shimasen. Watashi wa amari ni shubi ni uchi de osake no namimasen. I don't drink alcohol much at home on Sundays again. Nomimasen.
Always negative verb with amari and zenzen. Got it, though. Don't you sometimes hear zenzen used with positives in casual speech? Like zenzen daijubu.
That's a very sharp observation. Yes. Colloquially, you will hear things like zenzen daijubu, totally fine, or zenzen di, totally good. It's common in casual spoken Japanese.
But grammatically.
Grammatically, it's considered incorrect, or at least very informal by prescriptive standards. For learners, the safest and always correct path is stick to the rule. Amari and zenzen go with negative verbs. Master that first.
Sound advice. Okay, that negative adverb rule is locked in. This whole discussion about flexibility and rules brings us to another huge point. Japanese word order in general.
Ah, yes. The freedom of Japanese word order.
We learn English is SVO. Subject, verb, object. The cat eats the mouse. Japanese is often taught as SOV. Subject, object, verb. The cat, the mouse eats. But you're saying it's not that rigid?
Not at all. SOV is the basic neutral template, but Japanese is way more flexible than English. Because the particles, like waga or nide, mark the function of each word, the order can often be shuffled around quite a bit without losing meaning, especially in speech.
As long as the particles are correct.
Exactly. The particles do the heavy lifting. Context also plays a massive role. Subjects and objects are frequently omitted if they're understood.
Can we see that flexibility in action? Let's use that cat and mouse example.
Sure. Standard SOV. Neko wa nezumi o tabemasu. Cat, SUBJ, mouse, OBJ eats.
Okay.
OSV, object first. Nezumi o eneko wa tabemasu. Mouse, OBJ, cat, SUBJ eats. Perfectly fine. Maybe emphasizes the mouse a bit.
Still clear because of O and wa.
Right. Ovi, object verb, subject implied.
Yeah.
When you know we're talking about the cat, just nezumi o tabemasu, mouse, OBJ eats. Super common.
Wow, dropping the subject entirely.
Very normal in Japanese. VO, verb object. Less common in writing, but possible in speech, maybe for effect. Tabemasu nezumi o, eats mouse OBJ.
And just the verb.
As we said, if context allows, tabemasu eats. Could mean I eat, he eats, the cat eats, depending on context.
So the big takeaway is particles and context are king. Word order is flexible, though verb usually stays at the end of the clause. And you can omit tons of stuff.
That's the essence of it. It feels weird coming from English, but it allows for incredibly concise and context-dependent communication.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why Japanese can feel so fluid once you get the hang of it, right?
Exactly. It's less about rigid slots, more about marking relationships and letting context fill the gaps. Embracing that flexibility is key to sounding natural. #tag V. Cultural nuances and practical application.
Now, besides all this heavy grammar, Genki Lesson 3 also sprinkles in cultural notes, like about Japanese houses or New Year's customs. We haven't focused on those today.
Right, our focus was the grammar hurdles.
But it's good to remember the textbook offers that broader context, too. Language and culture go hand in hand.
They absolutely do.
But let's bring it back to the practical side. For the learner who's maybe struggling with this lesson's grammar, what are the absolute best ways to practice and really make these concepts stick?
Practice, 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 and crucially, active practice. It's not enough to just read the rules, you have to use them.
Like making your own sentences.
Yes. The source material says it is important to practice a lot so that you can make sentences in your own language. Even if you start small, Take a textbook example sentence and just change one word. Swap the noun. Use a different verb. Change the time expression.
Make it personal.
Exactly. Describe your day. I wake up at 7. Shichiji de okimasu. I drink coffee at home. Uchi de kuchu o nomimasu. I go to work. Kosha ni ikimasu. Applying it to yourself makes it much more memorable.
And don't be afraid of making mistakes while doing that.
Absolutely not. Mistakes are how you learn. If you wait until you're perfect, you'll never speak. Try it out. Get feedback if you can. Adjust. Repeat.
What specific parts of the Genki resources should learners really focus on for Lesson 3 practice?
Definitely use the whole ecosystem Genki provides. Kanji practice. Okay, kanji can feel overwhelming. The key for Lesson 3 is learn the vocabulary words first. Pronunciation, meaning you aren't expected to master writing every single kanji for every new word immediately.
So focus on the grammar and vocab, meaning first if kanji is a bottleneck.
Yes, learn the words, learn the grammar. Then gradually integrate the kanji. Start by just recognizing them in the reading sections. Then try writing the ones Genki explicitly focuses on for the lesson. Don't let kanji paralysis stop you from mastering the verbs and particles.
Good advice. What else?
Katakana practice. Essential for loan words. Do those matching exercises. Reading practice. Don't skip the readings like Moe's trip to Vienna or Robert's postcard. They show the grammar and context. Read them aloud. Try to understand them without translating every single word.
See the patterns in action.
Exactly. And of course, the workbook exercises. These are not optional extras. They directly target the lesson's grammar points, comparisons, questions, listening comprehension. Do them. Check your answers. Understand why you got something wrong.
Use all the tools provided.
Definitely.
And back to that feeling of it being a steep curve. What's the general consensus from other learners, say, online? Any words of encouragement?
The overwhelming message from the community is, yes, Lesson 3 is hard. You are not alone. Everyone finds it challenging. It's a known bottleneck.
So step 1 is don't feel bad about struggling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's normal. The advice usually boils down to take your time. Don't feel pressured to rush through it. Spend an extra week if needed. A solid foundation here is crucial for everything that follows. Seriously, don't rush Lesson 3.
Better slow and steady than fast and confused later.
Precisely. Use other resources. Look up YouTube videos explaining Lesson 3 grammar. Find online quizzes. Maybe use a supplementary grammar guide, like the Dictionary of Japanese Grammar, for alternative explanations. Yeah. Sometimes hearing it phrased differently makes it click.
Don't rely only on Genki if you're stuck.
Right. Prioritize.
Yeah.
As we said, get the verb types, ichidangan via nai form, and particle functions, od, ni. Absolutely solid. That's the core engine. Be consistent. Even 15-20 minutes of focused practice every day is better than one marathon session once a week. Keep the concepts fresh.
Okay, so by breaking it down like we did today, really understanding Ichidan versus Godan with the nai form, grasping particles, the present tense nuances, adverbs, word order, that steep curve starts to look more like a series of manageable steps.
Hopefully, yes. Less of a cliff, more of a climb you're equipped for.
It really feels like you've gained a massive shortcut today to understanding the fundamental structure, the real backbone of Japanese sentences.
It's moving beyond just mimicking phrases to actually understanding how the language constructs meaning.
That foundation you built here in Lesson 3, it's not just for the next chapter, it's for your entire Japanese journey.
Couldn't agree more. The effort pays off immensely down the line, which, raises an important question for you listening. How are you going to take this clearer understanding, these tools, and apply them? How will you make your Japanese truly your own?
That's the real goal, isn't it? And maybe think about this as you continue. Mastering these core structures isn't just about textbook accuracy. It's about developing an intuition for Japanese. Getting to a point where you start to feel what sounds natural, what flows correctly, even if you can't instantly recall the specific grammar rule behind it.
Exactly. It's like developing a sixth sense for the language. Moving from consciously applying rules to subconsciously understanding the rhythm and logic. That's when it gets really exciting.
Think of it not just as learning rules, but as cultivating that linguistic sense.
That's the path forward. Building on this solid foundation, connecting with the language more intuitively. Keep practicing, keep exploring.